Okay, so we continue our discussion of this book with chapter 9 that is dedicated to Max Euwe. Max Euwe was a champion, world champion, because he beat Alekhine, or Alekhine as the Americans say it, in a world match. From this book I discovered that it was Alekhine that invited Euwe to play a world match, which means that Alekhine thought he would win, otherwise he would never do it. In fact, he never gave Capablanca the chance to play another match, because he was afraid he wasn't able to win. Okay, let's see the game. Okay, so this was the 26th match game played in Zandvoort in 1935. Euwe is white, Alekhine black, okay? And here it says, by game 26 the match had reached boiling point. In the previous game, Euwe had taken the lead for the fourth time, having trailed by 3 points earlier in the match. Since a maximum of 30 games had been agreed for the match, Alekhine had 5 games left to catch or overtake his rival. Okay. d4, e6. So notice this move. Or is he inviting Euwe to play the French, or he doesn't want to play this because he's afraid that of this move, or of this move that are typical gambits against the Dutch, and maybe he wasn't prepared, because if he was prepared you play right away. But this is to avoid those problems. c4, f5, and here the author writes the Dutch defense, a fighting opening for par excellence. Notice that Alekhine plays the Dutch, not to Euwe, that is Dutch. g3, bishop b4, bishop d2, bishop e7. Alekhine had been the fourth to introduce this subtle bishop maneuver, which is based on the theory that white bishop might be slightly worse placed on d2 than on c1. Bishop g2, knight f6, knight c3, castle, knight f3, knight e4, castle, b6. In the 24th game, Alekhine had played bishop f6 instead of b6, okay? Bishop f6. Apparently unimpressed by Alekhine's novelty, Euwe continues to develop his pieces naturally. Okay, I didn't know that this was a novelty. In reality, it's normally played because you want to do this, but not really when this is already on this diagonal. Generally, you do it when they develop the bishop on this side, and so it's really good, but I don't know. Queen c2, bishop b7, knight e5, knight takes c3. Okay, this is very interesting. A typical Alekhine idea, white is invited to play bishop takes b7. Let's see what happens, because this is interesting. Bishop take b7. Which wins the exchange and returns for 2 pawns after knight takes e2, king h1, knight takes d4, queen d3, knight b c6, bishop takes a8, and here we have queen takes a8, after which the position is murky, but probably good for black, thanks to his strong knight on d4. Ov remains unruffled and continues to play logically and according to plan. Yeah, the position is murky because this is directly attacking that. So it must be careful also playing this. Boo, interesting. Very interesting. I didn't consider this, as you can see, also to watch these old games. This game is 90 years old. It's really amazing because you learn something new. Let me put the position back to what it was. Okay, so the position was here, and Alekhine played knight takes c3. Honestly, I think I understand now what they mean when they tell you study the classics. You need to study the classics, and I believe also champions like Magnus Carlsen, he said that he studied the classic because the idea that we just saw of taking here, this is something which could also be used in a blitz game. Maybe it's a difference between winning a tournament or not. So it's very, very interesting, this story. Bishop takes c3, bishop takes g2, king takes g2, queen c8, d5, exclamation point. This consolidates white space advantage and opens a beautiful diagonal for the bishop. This bishop diagonal. Okay? So one can say that white has won the opening battle. Naturally, when playing against an opponent like Alekhine, this is only the first step, but it is a very important one all the same. It should be kept in mind that Alekhine was used to winning opening battles, not losing them. And let's see what happens. d6, knight d3, e5, okay, and king h1. This move, I think I saw this move because I saw this game by Ov, I think I saw it. That move is amazing because it has an idea behind that is huge. The idea, it's all based on this knight d3 that is want probably to do something like this. So imagine how deep are the ideas in these classical games. Yeah. c6, queen b3, king h8, f4, e4, and knight b4. Well, it didn't go like I thought, but it's still interesting. The positional threat of d takes c6, knight takes c6, and knight d5 now forces black to close the queen side. When he played 15c6, Alekhine probably hoped to create counterplay along the c5. So this must have been a slightly disappointment. Okay? Let's see. c5, knight c2, knight d7, knight e3. The knight is now ideally placed, both for putting pressure on f5 and for supporting the strategically important advance of the g-pawn. bishop f6 is considered a mistake. It is understandable that black wants to neutralize the pressure against g7. Should white now simply continue with bishop takes f6? Let's see. Black play would have been justified, yeah, but obviously didn't do it, right? Yeah. Knight takes f5, yeah. Bishop takes e3. Knight takes d6. Queen b8. Knight takes e4. And bishop f6. White has given up his bishop for 3 pawns, so we can't really call knight takes f5 a sacrifice. Yet, to exchange an already promising risk-free position for this very complicated, potentially double-edged situation requires courage that few would have brought to such a crucial game, especially when being a point ahead. Ove now wastes no time in getting his impressive central pawn phalanx moving. Okay, so yes, this that are going to become a very powerful force when pushed. Knight d2, taking away so he can push. g5, very good move. Nor does Alekhine beat about the bush. Before the advance of white's e-pawn can smother him, he starts a counterplay on the king's side. e4, g takes f4, g takes f4, wow, now it's 3 pawns in, this is a really strong, it's maybe the value of a piece because you are not able to stop them without giving up something. Bishop d4, what looked like a totally invulnerable pawn chain only a minute ago now suddenly contains a weak spot. The pawn on f4 requires protection. White is thus prevented from continuing with the ideal move knight e2, d2, f3. Okay? Yeah, obviously. e5, queen e8, e6. And now there is rook g8, a good move. Black makes optimal use of the open g file. If e takes d7, white even loses after queen e2 because of a checkmate here. Okay, let's see what happens. Knight f3. At first glance, this seems a perfectly straightforward, logical, even powerful move. Yet, in his annotations to this game, Ove points out that 29 queen h3 would have been infinitely stronger. Okay. However, knight f3 may not be the best, it is undeniably a fearless move, for it involves another and this time very real sacrifice. Let's see what is it, what is about. Queen g6, and now there is rook g1. Wow. By the way, here there is a note about this move that it's not good, okay? Try to find out why, because this is the goal of this, of watching games and videos. If you don't actually do some exercise, what are you doing here? So pause the video. I will show you the move. It's knight e5. But again, you should have found it by yourself, okay? So let's see rook g1, what happens. Bishop takes g1, rook takes g1, queen f6, yeah, It seems that also here this move would have changed the course of the game. Please find yourself why, or buy the book and read the annotations, okay? Knight g5. This is very strong. The threat obviously is knight f7 and it's a mess. Let's see what happens. Rook g7, e takes d7, rook takes d7, queen e3, and rook e7. Obviously here you cannot take here because after this move queen e6 white wins the game, okay? Okay, after rook e7, knight e6. Here there are some calculations that were done, okay? Knight f8, sorry, rook f8, queen e5, and again at this point they are trying to transition into an endgame, and from the way they are playing they are trying to decide who will win the endgame, because they already know which endgame is favorable, which means that's why we need to study the endgames, right? Okay, queen takes e5, f takes e5, and rook f5, rook e1, because these are very powerful. If they can both reach here, one of the two rooks is gone just to stop them. And here there is a mistake. Look that here there are many notes and analysis that you should see if you buy the book, because it's worth it. h6, sorry, I'm just curious to see how this ends, because I didn't see this game. Knight d8, rook f2, e6, rook d2, and the game was adjourned here. Yeah, practically in that time when they reach move 40 they could put the next move in the envelope, and then it would start the next day. So let's see, knight c6, rook e8, e7, b5, attacking the chain, knight d8, king g7, knight b7, king f6, rook e6, king g5, knight d6, take, check. And it's gone. Very good. Very good. Very interesting game. Okay. I hope you enjoyed this game from King of a Chessboard. Obviously there are more fragments and games like this inside the book which show the features of each champion and some interesting stories. Honestly, it's a nice book.